Hello beautiful and welcome back to my channel and welcome to this video that's going to be the battle of the green palettes. I have collected all of the green palettes that I have in my collection. We're just going to go through all of them. I'm going to show you close-ups and swatches of all of them, and I'm going to let you know which one is right for you. Why are these on my collection? Which ones do I think serve a different kind of purpose? Like just helping you find maybe a green palette that's right for you. I don't know, or maybe you just want to see a lot of sparkly swatches. And if you haven't been here before, if this is your first video here, hello, my name is Angie. I'm such a lover of beauty makeup. I love everything beauty makeup related, especially things that are a little bit more colorful, which is why I have an obscene amount of green eyeshadow palettes that we're going to go through. And if you want to see more of that, don't forget to subscribe because I upload 5 videos every week. I am actually wearing a purple green look today, and I'm actually not wearing one of the palettes that we're going to be talking about today because I am in the middle of filming looks with the Unearthly Cosmetics Vitality palette. I will link the things that I have on my face in a pinned comment. So if you're interested in this palette or if you want to see what other things I have on my face, that's going to be in a pinned comment. I will also put a link in that video to the look right here because that will already be live once you're seeing this video. So let's just put that to the side because I have been I spent hours filming b-roll for all of these palettes, basically showing a close-up of the palette and also showing some swatches of these palettes. And I am going to divide these into all green palettes and then green palettes. There are not just green palettes. And how I try to do this when I was collecting these palettes for my collection, I tried to pick, first of all, palettes that are all green. If they're all green, they're all like they're a green palette or like predominantly green. But then I also picked some palettes that are actually more a half green, half something else palette, but they have been described as a green palette. So I tried that I like pick a couple of those. Maybe we should start there. Let's start with the palettes. There are a half green, half something else palette because a full green palette is not as common as you might think. And I want to start actually with my palette because my palette, when I started creating this palette, this is the Hela palette. This is my collaboration palette with Oden's Eye. This palette is, I think all of these palettes are available. I will link everything in the description box. And if they aren't available, they have been discontinued somewhere in between me filming this video and me like putting this video out. So I think these are available as I'm filming this. This one has been restocked for the last time. We did a really big restock though, so we still have some left. This one is the palette that I did with Oden's Eye, and when I started planning this palette, this is the palette that I have been digging into quite a lot. When I'm showing you, it's a little bit more of a polished, untouched version of this one. When I started planning this palette, I had in my mind that I want to do something that was warm and green, and then I wanted to have some pop of something else. And what I landed on is a pop of some pinks and also some plummy, sooty, black and like duochrome, multichromes down here. But I predominantly wanted this palette to be a warm green, yellow leaning palette. So that is what we have here in the more than half of this palette. This palette is of course a favorite of mine. I think that all of these colors are beautiful. I have a million looks with these. There are so many looks on YouTube as well if you want to get some inspo about this, and also inspo on Instagram. And I've also seen it on TikTok, which is very exciting to see the palette floating around on TikTok. Just very excited about this palette. Obviously I had to mention this one because this palette actually is more than half a green palette. The next palette that I have here that is not 100% a green palette, but I still think that it like is seen as a green palette, is the new Mikayla and Glamlite palette, the Paht 2. I don't think I'm saying that correctly. The mini palette. As I'm filming this, this is sold out and I don't know if they restocked it, but they will restock it. So I will link it down below and you can check yourself if you are able to see this. I do have a code with Glamlite. My code is Angelica. If I have any codes with any of these brands, I will put it down below. I do have a code with Oden's Eye as well. It's also Angelica, but it doesn't work on affiliate palettes that they have. This palette is very bright and very fun. And even the colors, there are neutrals in here. They lean a little green, especially the two at the end. They're a little bit more on the grungy, like swampy green undertone with the olives. I just think that this palette is great quality. It's very pigmented. I like that it is a half matte, half colorful palette. And I think that if you like neutral colors and you want to try a little bit of greens, I definitely think that this could be a good palette for you. It's a little bit more affordable for being like an indie brand, but but you still get the poppy greens here in the middle, and then this like duochrome, almost like a plum to like a tealy green duochrome, and then the olives on the side. I feel like for being a small palette and for being a neutral / green palette, I still feel like this one has a lot of range. This one I would recommend for anyone. Obviously, I mean, I love the palette. The next palette that is a half green, half something else palette is actually this one. It's still in the packaging because as I'm filming this palette actually hasn't been revealed yet, but it is available now. I think it is available as I'm seeing this video, and this is the Nomad Cosmetics new Cloud Forest palette. It says Bosque Nuboso di Monteverde. I think it's the Cloud Forest of Monteverde, and this is, when you look at it like this, you're like, oh, that's a very colorful palette. But when I swatched this palette out, I actually realized that this palette is a half matte neon palette, half green palette, and this is, spoiler alert, my favorite palette from Nomad Cosmetics so far. I think this is a beautiful palette. I love the looks that I did with it. These swatches were made with a swatch stencil because I wanted to make a fancy swatch picture for Instagram, but I swatched all of these with my finger, no primer, no nothing like that. But I really do like this palette, and I will say, if you want to have a palette that's very more on the bright side, you want to inject something fun to your collection, but you still want to have like greens as well, because I feel like this one ticks more than one box. These aren't neon like glow in the dark, but they're definitely very bright colors, and the greens are just really nice. You have light, a dark, a mid, you have some shimmers, you have like duochromes, and then these really bright, almost neon mattes. If you like brights and if you like greens, I feel like this would be a really good choice for you. Here's another palette that is not 100% green, but it has been described as a green palette, and I will say I think that this is a 50% greens, and this is the Adventure palette by Game Beauty. This is the first palette that they did, and I will say, and this is just me being 100% honest, and I have said this before, I don't think that this is their best formula. I know that they have updated the formula since, but I don't know if they've updated the formula in the old palette since. The packaging is stunning though. This one has a pressed glitter, and I feel like for this palette, I like the color scheme, and I think it's a decent formula, but it's not spectacular. But especially like the gaming inspired like elements, I feel like this is very like Zelda, right? It's very Zelda, so if you like that, I think you'd like it even more. I think especially this palette would make an amazing gift to someone who loves both gaming and makeup. This is also a half neutral, half green palette. This is the perfect palette if you want to try some greens but you don't want the brights. You want it to be muted, you don't want it to be too bright, too green, or too deep. Then this is the perfect palette for you. I think this is on sale right now, as is all things from Urban Decay, because I'm getting stuck in stuff. This is the Wild Greens by Urban Decay, and I mean, is it neither very green or wild, to be honest, but they described it more as like wild greens, as being more like greens as in nature inspired, and like I can see that. Some of the names are like Earthside, Super Green, Prickly, Kale, like I get it. It's not horrible quality. I think that for being Urban Decay, this is actually pretty decent quality, but it's neither wild or green. But if you just wanted to try some greens and you're more into lighter, more effortless everyday looks, and you just want to inject some greens and have some neutrals, I don't think you'd be disappointed. But if you were looking for that green palette, I don't know if this one would be the right one for you. Okay, just a few more palettes that are not like 100% green. First one is the Tribe palette by Juvia's Place. This one goes in and out of stock, and sometimes it disappears from the website, but so far it's always come back. Is this my favorite palette from Juvia's Place? I'm not sure anymore, but for a really long time this was my favorite palette by Juvia's Place. This is a half orange, half green palette, and it has a very bright, almost marker yellow green shade that is a matte that's very cool. There's also, it looks a little bit like a champagne shimmer in the pan, but it's actually like a beige shimmer with like a light green shift. It's very pretty. This palette was before its time in a lot of places, and I think that this is a really good quality palette. And like I said, for a really long time, maybe still, I'm not 100% sure, I haven't looked through my Juvia's palettes in quite some time, this was my favorite palette from Juvia's Place. And again, if you want to have some bright greens, because this is like, some of these colors are like almost neons, but still there is a couple of neutrals here. You can go in different directions, and there's a couple of oranges if you really love the the warm colors. I do still think that this holds a candle towards other green palettes in my collection, and I still think that this is good quality. Not 100% sure if this is in stock or not. You never know with Juvia's Place. Colourpop has a couple of green palettes, and I especially think that they have a couple of green palettes that are half green, half neutral, and I have two of them here to show you, and this is the Star Wars Mandalorian palette. First of all, the packaging is absolutely stunning. Well, this isn't the Mandalorian, this is the child palette. There is a palette that's actually called the Mandalorian palette. Listen, Disney and Colourpop, they're one and the same at this point. This is a really beautiful palette if you want to try greens, but you like neutrals and you don't want it to be too poppy, but you still want it to be green, because this is more green than the Kale palette by Urban Decay. What is it called? Wild Greens. This is more green than that, but it's not that bright neon grass Kermit, that kind of a green. It's not that green, but it's still very good quality. It's a beautiful palette. You can make an all green look if you want to. It's leaning a lot more cool tone, so if you like cool tone shades, this might be for you. There's also one that is a lot more on the brighter side, and this one disappeared from the site and then they brought it back again, so keep your eyes open if this one comes back, because this is the Colourpop and Tinkerbell. I told you, Disney and Colourpop, they're the same at this point. This one is almost all green. There's just a couple of neutral shades here. This one is still cool toned, but a lot brighter. So if you want to still be on the cool tone green side, but you want it to be brighter, this could be for you, and you still want to have a smaller palette, because I have a couple of bigger palettes to talk about in a bit that has like both the cool tones and the warm tones, which is something that I really like in a palette. But this one is really high quality. It's more bright, definitely more out there, definitely more green, but also a little bit more on the cool tone side. Let's talk about some all green palettes. I have a couple to talk about, I have a couple to show you, and honestly, these are some really, really good palettes. Let's stick with Colourpop since we're in Colourpop country. This is palette from this year, and this is Colourpop In The Limelight. I really like this palette. This is bright, and this has a couple of like leaning a little bit more on the neutral side. This one is like a beige, but this one has a very green undertone. This looks green on the eyes. This one has a green sheen, same here. It really does pull green. So this is almost a monochromatic palette that has one beige, but I would say that all of these shades except this one is indeed a green shade. This is more on the warm side. If you like warm shades, definitely this is for you, because I feel like all of these shades are leaning pretty warm, if I'm gonna be honest, and I think these are beautiful. I have had a lot of fun with this palette, more fun than I thought I was gonna have. I think most of these palettes were bought by myself, but there's a couple that I've been sent in PR. If you check the description box, I will mark which ones I bought myself and which ones are sent in PR. This one I bought myself. You can always find the info in the description box, but yeah, I've really been enjoying this one. If you want a smaller palette that's all green and a little bit more on the warmer side, this could be for you. And you want an all green palette from Colourpop that's more on the cooler side, I would say this one. This is all greens. This one is like a more of a warmer line, but other than that, all of these shades are pretty cool tone. This khaki color down here that is like a dark green, you can see that it's resembling the one from the Limelight palette, but this one is more cool tone and this one is more warm tone. So they're definitely not dupes. They're the same category of shades, but this is leaning more cool tone, the other one is leaning more warm tone. I will say that these two shimmers here are a little bit more on the warm side, but if you want a poppy palette that's all brights pretty much and all greens, a little bit more on the cool tone side, a little bit more on the minty teal side, this could be for you. This is such a beautiful in the corner highlight, this like matte pastel green, really, really beautiful. Still think that this palette is a really nice one. Okay, last Colourpop one. This is a quad. This is an emerald away. This is a nice variety of colors. It's a light matte, it's a dark matte, it's a dark shimmer, it's a light shimmer. These are all incredible quality. I love the quads by Colourpop. Still, I have not been disappointed by them. The only ones that weren't like amazing were the ones they have from the like ice cream collection that they released. But this one and that smoothie collection that came this year and the astrology collection, all of them absolutely stunning. Again, this is a very cool tone story, a more sagey, cool tone, almost blended in with a little bit of grays in there. So if you like more moody greens, this could be for you. Okay, let's do another quad and then we can get into some bigger palettes. This is the Rebel Army quad by Juvia's Place. This is 4 shades. All of these are very pigmented. This is that foiled, almost oil slicky, high pigment, like shimmer metallic formula that are very opaque and very like they glide on the lid. These 2 mattes are both very pigmented and very dark. So for me, this isn't really a quad where I would ever use all 4 of these shades at the same time, or where I would use like only this quad and nothing else. I would complement this with something lighter for the inner corner or something lighter to buff out this dark matte with. But these are all very pigmented and high quality green shadows, and if you just want to add 4 green shadows to your collection, one and done, that's it, and mix and match with other things that you own, this could be a great option. It's also fairly affordable. Is this one of the oldest green palettes in this video? This is the Smoke Session palette. Remember when this one came, how people were literally falling over each other to get this one because it was so unique and it was green and it was grungy and it was dark. And when I look at it now, it's still deep and grungy and like all of that, but it's so, I don't want to say not unique, but like not, if this was released today, people would be like, okay, because it is a lot of really nice shimmers. They are that like if you use a finger or something, you can get a very high opaque result, and they are really, really beautiful, high impact, but there's nothing special about them. They're not like extra sparkly or extra like any kind of duochrome shift or anything like that. They're high quality, definitely, and these 2 dark mattes are really good. But I will say, if this had been released today, I don't think people would have been falling over each other as much as they did when this was released. It is all green, but it's like dark, olivey, like grungy, almost golden greens, and then half of it is like minty teal greens. There are no really like straight up like foresty greens or emerald greens or lime greens. It is like teals and then the murky olives leaning gold. It's still cool though. I just feel like you can tell just by looking at this palette that this is the palette that came out first of these palettes. This is the Dirty Martini palette by Glamlite. Ooh, this is an all green palette that has a lot of options. The only thing that this palette is missing for me is that it doesn't really have anything that's light enough for me to use in my inner corners. I don't mind mixing and matching and finding other shades in other palettes though. That's never been a problem for me, but that's the only thing that I'm missing in this palette. But what I really like about this palette is that it is a nice ratio between shimmers and mattes. There are dark mattes, there are mid-tone mattes, there are cool tone, warm tones. Look at this one, almost more minty with this like minty, like tealy cool tone. And then you have this grungy, like green brown, and then you have this more like olivey green, the warm, and this cool like sagey one. There are just a lot of variety when it comes to undertones in this palette, and I feel like that is what this palette and the next one does really well, is that it really captures a lot of different undertones when it comes to greens. Do you want a more blue teal leaning, more like a green olivey, like yellow leaning, or do you want it to be like more of a true green grass green? You have a lot of options in this one. So this is an all green palette that is a little bit more on the bigger side, that has more undertones. And it is the same with the Earthy palette by Beauté. If you want to get a green palette, if you want to get a green palette that's an all green palette, I think that I would recommend this one and the one that's coming after, because these have a lot of options. You go really light, really dark, shimmers, mattes, warm tones, cool tones, like this bright grassy green, the more olivey muted, and then it's almost like sagey pastel. There's just a lot of options in this one when it comes to undertones. And this palette is very affordable, so I feel like if you were into greens, maybe this doesn't have any of those super unpredictable shades, except maybe these 2, but I still think that this is a really nice palette, and I have been enjoying what I've been doing with this palette, and I would definitely recommend it. And I feel exactly the same about the Ace Beauté Tropical Vibes. This is such a good palette if you were into greens, but this one is very matte heavy. Mine has had a casualty here. Don't look at it too close. But for me, if you are like me and you like mattes and you feel like you want to add some green mattes to your collection, this one, it goes deep, it goes like warm, you have this almost yellow that's like a little green and it's so cool. It also has more like two like neutrals like here, but you have this dark, nice like pine green. I just really think that this is such a beautiful palette where you get so many nice high, I cannot emphasize enough high quality mattes, and the shimmers are really great too. But if you're more into shimmers, maybe this is not the palette for you, but if you're like me and you love mattes, these mattes are incredible and I cannot recommend it enough. I do have a code with Ace Beauté as well. Like I said, I will leave all the codes that I have down below in case you are interested in any of these palettes and you want to save some money. Use my code, use somebody else's code, just make sure that you can save some money where applicable. Which are my favorite? Of course, my palette is my favorite. Like, I'm not going to be sitting here being like, oh, I'm indifferent. Like, obviously, my palette is my favorite because, like, I made this palette. I love the mix of pink and green. I love these shimmers and I love this, like, yellow pastel, almost neon pastel matte, and I love that there's these dark shades down here. I also will say that the Colourpop green palettes, they're really good quality. I've really been loving it. This one is so good. I wore it the other day. It's just absolutely incredible. And I also like I said, this new Nomad palette, this is my favorite palette from Nomad. I'm just so impressed with the looks I did and how inspired I feel just looking at this. So I really do like this one as well. Honestly, I mean, I decluttered my bad palettes before I moved here, so I wouldn't say that any of these are a dud. If there's any one that is a little lower quality than the others, I would say maybe the Gay Beauty and maybe the Urban Decay one. But I do still think that if you are a little afraid of color and you don't want to have dark, deep, vibrant shades, I do think the Urban Decay palette could be for you. Let me know your favorite green palette down in the comments. I would love to hear your options. Maybe I'm missing out. Let me know also if there's another color that you would like me to do this with in the future. I did a Battle of the Berry palettes. I forgot to mention that in the beginning. I will leave that in the description box in case you're interested in seeing that one. But I definitely could do something else if there's another one that you want to hear about. I don't know how many I have in other categories. Maybe blue. Do I have blue? I don't know. Maybe. Let me know what you're interested in. Don't forget to subscribe and I will see you in my next video. Bye!